Assalamualaikum and very good day to everyone. My name is Fatini Balqis, As-Sakina binti Azlan. I am from College Polytechnic Mara, Bangi, Malaysia, and my co-author is Associate Professor Dr. Noor Abdul Hamid from Selangor Islamic University, Malaysia. Today, I'm going to present our research, the application of the theory of plain behavior in investigating the purchasing intention of second-hand clothing. So this is the presentation outline. As you can see, we're going to cover introduction, related literature, and perceptual framework, the research methodology, and the last one is the findings and also discussion. So as an introduction, we can see that in Malaysia, according to Azlan's 2021, the Carousel e-commerce index 2021 report stated that 8 out of 10 Malaysian people have made their second-hand purchases. And on top of that, TradeOut stated that global second-hand market will grow up to 350 billion by 2027, about 2 times its current size, and is expected to expand average 3 times quicker than global apparel market. At the same time, due to COVID-19 pandemic, it is estimated that clothing production has increased by 100% since 2000, and approximately 92 million tons of textile waste are created by the fashion industry annually. Malaysia itself generated textile waste increasingly and already almost 1,000 metric tons per day. And by 2030, the greenhouse gas emission from the clothing sector are expected to increase by more than 50% at this rate, and it is a study by UNEP 2019. The consumer has gradually shifting away from disposable fashion towards second-hand clothing because they become more aware about the drawback of rapid inflation. As more young consumers have become interested in eco-friendly fashion and vintage clothing over the past few years, the second-hand clothing business now has been steadily grew. And according to previous study, buying second-hand clothing are a practical way to cut down pollution and textile waste. Because when the new clothing is replaced by second-hand clothing, the human toxicity from the polyester cotton clothing can be reduced by 45%, and also the global warming caused by cotton t-shirt can be reduced by 14%. Now, the problem that we found in this area is even though the market second-hand clothing is expanding and the consumption proven give many benefits to environmental, there are several non-consumers has voiced their concern about purchasing and putting on used clothing because of their concern, including shared disease, contamination germs, and any unfortunate circumstances relating to previous owner. And also, by purchasing second-hand food, it also may carry additional risks and may have an impact on one's social standing. The consumer of non-second-hand clothing also convey their concern regarding used clothing by showing a negative view of the quality and also hygiene level, feeling unable to impress themselves and being afraid of the stigma associated by wearing used clothing in the community. There are also studies that stated that limitation to obtain second-hand clothing may include by not having sufficient knowledge of the channel that provide the goods. And last one, consumer may purchase second-hand clothing because they believe by doing so, it will help to alleviate environmental issues. Our research gap that we found is there are multiple studies have been carried out before about consumption of second-hand clothing, but very limited study in Malaysia regarding repurchase intention of second-hand clothing. Previous studies were conducted in other countries than Malaysia, such as Indonesia, United States, Kenya, and etc. While from previous study discovered that Chinese in China and Americans have different reasons for wanting to purchase at second-hand store. As a result, this research wants to discover Malaysian consumer repurchase intention and how their perspective on the sustainability of second-hand clothing may influence their decision to purchase them. Research on Malaysian consumer intention to purchase second-hand clothing was conducted before. However, the data were conducted during COVID-19 pandemic when all people struggle financially, which may indirectly increase their attitude towards second-hand clothing to save costs. Therefore, this research wants to re-examine Malaysian consumer in terms of their purchase intention for second-hand clothing after pandemic ends. In this study, we are applied theory of plain behavior as a theoretical foundation for this study. The theory of behavior or TPB suggests a few variables such as attitude, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control that may influence behavior. We also adapt one additional variable, which is environmental concern, that widely used to study for environmental behavior. It is also considered suitable for examining environmental practices, especially in sustainable fashion. As a result, we include environmental concern as one of the extra independent variables since it will help us analyze the impact of environmental issues on consumer purchases and give us a better understanding why Malaysian consumers repurchase second-hand clothing. This is a few literature review that related to the variable. The first variable is attitude. It is when people believe that particular behavior will lead to a positive outcome, they are more probably to form a positive attitude towards the behavior. In this research context, there are studies that stated that the customer are more likely to purchase second-hand clothing when they have positive perception or attitude of it. On the other hand, buyers who have unfavorable opinion of second-hand clothing are more likely to opposed to using them. Next, subjective norm. Subjective norm is a person, feeling, and action are influenced by others and force that shape people's choice. From previous study, the customer are more likely to purchase second-hand clothing when they feel social pressure to do so. There are also a study that discovered the purchase intention for environmental friendly and second-hand goods was significantly impacted by subjective norm. As a result, social influence plays a critical role in influencing a consumer intention to buy second-hand clothing. And then, for perceived behavioral control, consumer ability to purchase environmentally product is contingent upon their availability of resource, of time, and also opportunity. There is a study that states consumer intention to purchase second-hand clothing rises and their likelihood of engaging in second-hand buying behavior is increased if they perceive control of their purchases. In addition, according to Iron et al., customer who can purchase second-hand clothing will do so often. There are also studies that state perceived behavioral control is when customer intention to buy recycled goods is highly predicted by their perception of behavioral control. Last one is the variable that we adapt into TPB theory is environmental concern. Studied by a few research before, consumers who are concerned about environmental form strong attitude towards preserving the environment, which affect their consumption habits. Environmental concern have been acknowledged by motivating as a motivating factor for buying used goods as well as recycling and donating clothing and textiles. Customers who care about the environment are more likely to purchase second-hand clothing. Research framework. So this is the research framework for this study. There are 4 independent variables and dependent variable will be repurchase intention. Therefore, there are 4 hypotheses being attracted from this framework. For the methodology, research design chose quantitative method and using survey research design. The target respondent is Malaysian customer who purchases second-hand clothing and at least 20 years old. Our sample size using sample size provided by Fiji Morgan 384 samples for population larger than 1 million. The sampling method will be convenient sampling and the instrument that we use is online questionnaire. The questionnaire will be using the questionnaire itself using measurement scale, which is the 5-point Likert scale, which goes from 1 probably is 3 to 5 probably is 3. And the data collected are analyzed by using SPSS version 29.2. So, data analysis part. The data that collected are undergo reliability and validity tests. The range of combat alpha for all variables, attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavioral control, environmental concern, and also repurchase intention after reliability test is 0.804 to 0.951, which is all of them indicates high reliability following combat alpha coefficient thumb rule. And also, all the GMO for all variables indicate that the data was suitable for performing factor analysis, while the GMO value more than 0.6. The result of EFA, exploratory factor analysis, show that all the 23 variable items used in the measurement scale of the variable value more than the cut-off value of 0.3. Therefore, all the measurement items of 5 variables were retained to conduct further descriptive and statistical analysis. This is the demographic analysis result. The gender distribution among Malaysian second-hand clothing consumer is come from 195 male, 50.4%, and 192 females, indicating both gender actively shop for second-hand clothes. And therefore, for the age profile, majority of them come from age 20 to 29 years old, aligning with the trend of eco-friendly and vintage fashion among younger consumers. The education level, the respondent level of education vary widely. Most respondents 70.50 hold a degree. Occupation distribution, private sector employees are highest, following by students and government officers represent a diverse background of shopper. Last one is income distribution. Majority of them earn between 2,001 ringgit up to 5,000 ringgit, showing second-hand clothing is popular across various income levels. This is the normality test result. According to Palin 2011, the normal result value of skewness should be between +2 and -2, while kurtosis value should be between +3 to -3. The result of skewness and kurtosis is within the range of general guideline, which indicate that data is normal skewed distribution. This is the result of person correlation test. We can see that by following the rules of thumb about correlation coefficient by Holton 1974, the repurchase intention is positively correlated with attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavioral control, and environmental concern. We can see that all of them are following the correlation coefficient size and have a positive correlated with the purchase intention. Attitude has a strong to perfect correlation result. Subjective norm and perceived behavioral control has a moderate to strong correlation. And last one, environmental concern has fair correlation with repurchase intention. This is the last test, which is multiple linear regression, where attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavioral control has a positive regression coefficient and positive impact towards repurchase intention. All of these three, attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control variable, are significantly impacted repurchasing intention of second-hand clothing. Therefore, H1, H2, and H3 hypothesis is supported. Meanwhile, for environmental concern, the result shows that this variable does not have significant impact on the repurchasing intention of second-hand clothing. Therefore, H4 is not supported, and environmental concern does not significantly impact repurchase intention. The R square here indicates that combination of attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavioral control, and environmental concern explain approximately 74.3 of the variance in the independent variable. From the result itself, we can conclude that the objectives are met, and we can conclude that the variable for attitude is significantly impacting the repurchasing intention of second-hand clothing. Positive perception and past pleasant experience increase the repurchase likelihood. Therefore, retailers should be focused on positive experience and benefit like cost saving and alleviate environmental impact. For subjective norm, it is also significantly impact the repurchasing intention of second-hand clothing. Social circle opinion impact consumer behavior towards second-hand clothing. Social perception of second-hand clothing can be motivate a repurchase. For perceived behavioral control variable, it is also significantly impacting the repurchasing intention of second-hand clothing. Therefore, high perceived behavioral control will increase the likelihood of second-hand clothing purchases. For the additional variable, environmental concern, it does not have significant impact on repurchasing intention of second-hand clothing. This is supported by previous study that stated awareness of environmental as a whole is not similar with concern of environmental effect due to the textile pollution. In this research context, we can say that Malaysians who are aware about global environmental problems might not have sufficient information regarding textile pollution. The limitation of this study is this study only mainly focused on TPB theory with attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavioral control, and environmental concern as a factor. We are excluding a few potential influences such as pricing factor and inflation trend. We also only relies on online questionnaire and limiting participants to internet user only. We also lack of qualitative data by relying on quantitative analysis. Last one, this study only examined consumer intention to repurchase second-hand clothing in general. Our suggestion for future research will be to include additional variables such as pricing factor and also fashion trends in the study. Future research also can employ a mixed method approach to gain deeper insight into consumer behavior and also including participants without extensive internet access. Further research can be considered to research on consumer purchase intention for specific items of second-hand such as jacket, sweater, and etc. This approach will enrich academic knowledge and provide useful information for industry practitioners. That's all from me. Thank you and Assalamualaikum. For theory of, sorry,